Hi, I'm Maribel. My mom once looked me straight in the eye and said, "We all agreed. You're not welcome at Christmas." I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just stopped paying the mortgage on the very house they were celebrating in. But that wasn't the worst part. What hurt more was realizing they'd been planning my erasure long before that day. Quietly, collectively, while I paid the bills, lit the tree, and kept their secrets. So, why does a family keep what you give, but throw away who you are? Would you stay? Or would you walk out and make them feel what you carried in silence for years? Let's talk about that. I checked my email that morning, expecting the usual. Some group message about who's bringing what dish, who's flying in from out of town, and what night we'd all cram into Mom's living room, pretending we hadn't avoided each other the whole year. But the inbox was empty. I refreshed it twice. Then a third time, out of habit, not hope. Still nothing. I stared at the screen a while longer, trying to tell myself maybe they hadn't started planning yet. Maybe they were waiting on something. But in my gut, I knew better. The silence wasn't accidental. It was orchestrated. Later that afternoon, I opened our shared family drive, where we usually uploaded the gift registry, dinner playlists, and that ridiculous spreadsheet Carlene made every year ranking who brought the most useful food. The folder was gone. I didn't panic. I didn't message anyone, not right away. I clicked around, tried an old invite link. Access denied. It didn't feel like a glitch. I sent a short text to Carlene. "Hey, did you take down the family folder?" No response. 38 minutes later, a message came in from Mom. "I figured you'd be busy this year. Don't stress about Christmas." No, "How are you?" No, "We missed you last year." Just a line meant to sound caring. And yet it felt like a lock clicking shut behind me. I didn't reply, but I took a screenshot. That night, I lay in bed longer than usual, phone face down on the nightstand. The quiet was heavier than normal. I wasn't crying. I don't cry over things that predictable anymore. But I felt something inside me rearrange. I'd seen this playbook before. Last year, I showed up late after a client meeting ran long. I walked in with arms full of gifts, some still warm cookies I'd baked at 2 a.m., and not a single person looked up. The table was packed, every chair full. I ended up at the kitchen counter with a paper plate and no napkin. "Look who finally decided to show," someone mumbled. I didn't even catch who. "Doesn't matter." They all laughed. Back then, I told myself it wasn't intentional. People get stressed. Holiday plans shift. Maybe they just forgot I didn't eat pork, or that I always brought the deviled eggs no one ever acknowledged, but everyone finished. But now it felt deliberate. Like a group decision had been made about me, somewhere behind closed doors. Some digital vote I wasn't invited to join. I opened my laptop and pulled up my budgeting spreadsheet. I stared at the December mortgage line. 1,368, 1 to 20 times. Recurring auto payment. The same line had been there every month for the last 3 years. Quiet, predictable, paid. They lived in that house. They cooked in that kitchen, celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, even baby showers in the sunroom I refinished. And not one of them thought I might want to sit at the table again this year. I closed the file, didn't delete anything, just shut the screen and sat there. Still, no yelling, no rage. But inside me, something was shifting. I thought about the word family, what it used to mean, what it's supposed to mean. And then I thought, if I'm not invited to be in it, why am I the one paying for it? I didn't stop the mortgage payment, not that day. That would come later. But something cracked inside me, clean and quiet, like glass under pressure. And I knew it wasn't going to mend the same way again. I didn't text anyone. I didn't open social media to look for clues. I just sat in that quiet apartment of mine. No Christmas lights, no fake cheer. And I listened to the silence they left behind. Not a single call, not a single invite. And it hit me. They didn't forget. They decided. The voicemail came 5 days later. I'd just set down a grocery bag, milk, celery, and a bottle of wine I probably wouldn't open, when the screen lit up. "Mom," it read in all caps, because I never changed her contact name after syncing my phone. I stood in my kitchen for a moment, the plastic bag still looped around my wrist, and hit play. Her tone was flat, a little too polite, like she was reading a line someone told her to memorize. "The family talked, and we just think it might be easier if you don't come this year. It's nothing personal. We all agreed. You know how things get." We all agreed. Not, "I feel." Not, "It's hard for me." No hesitation, no sorrow. Just a sentence that sounded like a verdict, not a conversation. I didn't drop the groceries. I didn't curse. I just set the bag down slowly, took off my coat, and replayed it twice. Then I hit save. Later that night, I opened our old group text, me, Carlene, and 2 cousins, only to find the name had changed. The real ones. Cute. Subtle. My name wasn't listed in the members anymore, just like that. I clicked on another thread, the one from last year labeled Holiday Hysteria, but it was gone. Not deleted, archived, moved somewhere I couldn't reach. I scrolled through my inbox and noticed the same pattern. No calendar invites, no email threads, no old reminders. Not even the passive-aggressive reminders Carlene used to send, the kind that said, "Don't forget to label your serving dish," unlike last year. It was like I'd been scrubbed clean from their December. And this time, there wasn't even the pretense of forgetting. They had removed me. Carefully, cleanly. Like dusting off an old picture frame before putting someone else's photo inside. It was about 10 p.m. when I finally cracked open a bottle of red and sat down in the silence. I was halfway through checking work emails when I saw a comment under one of my cousin Kayla's posts. "So glad everyone could be there for the vote. Hard, but necessary." Vote? I clicked the post open. It was a group selfie, 12 smiling faces, mostly familiar, all seated around Mom's dining table. The caption read, "Doing what's best for the whole family isn't always easy, but it's worth it." My stomach didn't sink. It stiffened, like bracing for impact. I zoomed in. Carlene was holding up a wine glass. Uncle Todd was laughing. Mom sat at the end of the table, her hand on Kayla's shoulder like she'd just passed down the crown. There was no empty seat for me, no place card, no space held. They had a meeting, without me, and made a decision, about me. They didn't think I'd find out, or maybe they just didn't care if I did. I closed the post, muted the group, and turned off my phone. The next morning, I listened to Mom's voicemail again while brushing my teeth. She sounded rehearsed, like someone trying to break bad news without getting any on her clothes. I heard the line again. "We all agreed. You're not welcome." There was no hesitation in her voice. No pause, no guilt. She might as well have said, "Your position has been eliminated." I didn't call her back. I didn't text Carlene. But I opened a clean document on my laptop and started typing, "Mortgage paid from 2020 to present. Christmas dinner, $312 groceries last year. Oven repair, March 2021, $645. Utilities paid for June-August. Down payment assist, notarized July 2019. It wasn't rage that made me do it. It was clarity. If they were going to erase me from the story, I'd keep a copy for myself. After saving that spreadsheet, I shut my laptop and stared at my hands for a while, palms open, fingertips twitching slightly, like they were trying to hold on to something that had already slipped away. A few hours later, sometime around lunch, Carlene's name lit up on my screen. A message, short, precise, no emojis, no cushion. "You always made things tense. Honestly, it's better this way." Then another line, like a footnote she'd been waiting years to write. "You were never really good at being part of this family." I blinked at it. Once. Then again. I didn't respond. I didn't forward it to anyone. I just took a screenshot and saved it in the same folder where I'd been tracking the rest of their quiet revisions of my place in their narrative. You don't have to shout when you're erasing someone. Whispered edits work just as well. That evening, I reheated some leftover risotto and flipped through a drawer looking for stamps. I didn't know why. maybe just something to do. My phone buzzed again, and this time, it was a memory from my photo app. 3 years ago, a picture of the Christmas gifts I'd shipped overnight from my apartment in Raleigh to Mom's house in Asheville. I'd stayed late at work to afford those presents. A bracelet Carlene had casually admired back in May. A scarf I'd found online, in just the shade Mom used to wear in her old teaching photos. But in the photos posted from that Christmas morning, ones I saw only later through someone else's public album, the tags had been changed. "From all of us," Carlene said proudly in one of the captions. Everyone was gathered around, clapping. I wasn't there. I wasn't mentioned. I was just folded into the collective, repackaged and sold as a group effort. Not one person corrected her, not even Mom. That moment had lodged in the back of my mind, like a piece of glass in soft flesh. Sharp, but ignorable. Until now, I set my phone face down on the table and stood up, suddenly restless. I walked to the window, peered out over the dim outline of the neighborhood below. Across the street, a couple had just finished putting up their Christmas lights. White and gold, classic. The kind Mom used to love. I hadn't bought a tree. I hadn't even bothered with a wreath this year. That same evening, maybe out of masochism, or maybe because I was tired of being surprised by what didn't shock me anymore, I pulled up Facebook and tapped into my mother's page. The first post that greeted me was a picture of her dining room. 12 chairs, candles flickering, a turkey in the center. My youngest cousin Kayla holding a tray of rolls, smiling like she'd won something. The caption read, "Grateful for everyone who made this family whole again this year." That word, whole, hit harder than anything Carlene had typed. Harder than Mom's voicemail, harder than the silence. I zoomed in on the photo. I recognized the place cards, Carlene's overdone cursive, the glitter pen she'd used for years. There wasn't an empty chair. There wasn't a missing name. I wasn't expected. I wasn't wanted. I shut the app and reached for my calendar. There, still nestled between two meetings, was my PTO approval for December 22nd through the 27th. I'd requested it back in October. I'd even booked the flight weeks ago, just in case. I canceled the request. Then the flight. It was non-refundable, but I didn't care. The thought of sitting in an airport, wondering if anyone would pick me up on the other end, made my stomach twist. This wasn't a protest. This was a decision. They wanted a Christmas without me, so they'd get it. The next day, I made myself a full breakfast, eggs, sourdough toast, even orange slices, and opened my banking app while sipping coffee. The mortgage payment was scheduled to hit in 3 days. I stared at the number, not because I couldn't afford it, but because I finally asked myself the one question I'd never let fully land. Why was I still paying for a life I wasn't allowed to be in? It's funny the way exclusion works. It starts with subtle things. Forgotten texts, rearranged plans, missed birthdays you pretend weren't deliberate. But eventually, it grows roots. And one morning, you realize it's not just that they don't see you. They never did. I didn't move for a while after that question settled in me. Why was I still paying for a life I wasn't even invited to be part of? The thought didn't leave when I showered or when I walked to the corner store later for a new box of tea I didn't need. It sat with me, steady and quiet, like an answer already decided before I asked the question. That night, I didn't open Netflix or scroll through my phone. Instead, I pulled up my banking dashboard. There it was, scheduled like always. 1/368/22, set to leave my account 3 days from now. I clicked into the History tab. One by one, I scrolled backward. Payment after payment, month after month, 36 in total. Every transaction tagged, Crane June Property, Asheville, NC. They sat in that house, smiled in it, toasted wine in it, called it ours, without ever saying mine. But I was the one keeping the heat on. Quietly, consistently. That house was built with more than money. It was built with every "don't worry, I got it" that I never asked them to remember. I opened a different folder, cloud drive, password protected, scanned files, one after the other. And there it was, like a punch to the gut. Warranty deed, Dolores June. I'd signed as a co-borrower so she could qualify for the mortgage. It was supposed to be temporary, a favor. She'd promised to sign over partial ownership once we got things stable. That conversation happened in the middle of a grocery run 3 years ago. Frozen peas in my hand, her voice easy and casual, like it wasn't binding. I believed her, because she was my mother. But the paperwork was clear. My name wasn't on the title. I was just the one footing the bill. And for the first time, I let it land. I hadn't just been excluded from Christmas. I had been used. Systematically, quietly, and with a smile. I didn't cry. I didn't pace the apartment. I just clicked out of the file, pushed back from the desk, and sat in the silence. Around 9 that evening, my email pinged. A forwarded photo from my aunt, probably meant for someone else. I almost deleted it without looking, but something in me paused. When I opened it, I recognized the kitchen immediately. Mine. Or what used to feel like mine. The new backsplash I paid for, the custom chairs I ordered, the same granite counters I'd driven 4 hours to pick out because Mom said the local options were cheap-looking. 12 faces. Full table. Candles burning. Everyone smiling like they were part of something sacred. The caption read, "In Mom's home, where she raised us all." My chest didn't hurt, but something behind my eyes buzzed like a quiet static. I read it again. The words sat heavy in my throat. That kitchen? I paid for it. That centerpiece. I carried it from Raleigh with both arms and a trunk full of bubble wrap. I checked the message thread. Not a single thank you. Not even a, "Hey, saw your gift come in." Just silence. I clicked back to my bank account, paused the auto payment. Then I sat there, not with vengeance, not with heat, but with something heavier. No one was going to send a letter asking why. No one was going to call me to see if I was okay. And I knew that. But they were going to notice. Eventually. Not because I made a scene, but because something they relied on, something they assumed would always just happen, was about to stop. I didn't send a warning. I didn't write a manifesto. I just opened a blank folder on my desktop and labeled it Exit Plan. Then I started filling it. Screenshots, receipts, deeds, emails. Because someday, when the story gets told again, I wanted to be able to say, "Here, this is what I carried while you clapped for each other." After saving the last document to the Exit Plan folder, I closed my laptop, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. The room was still, the air inside it colder than usual. I leaned against the counter, glass in hand, listening to the low hum of the refrigerator and the tick of the wall clock that always ran 2 minutes slow. I didn't tell anyone what I had done. I didn't owe them that. 2 days later, December 21st, I logged into my bank account and canceled the mortgage auto payment. Just like that. One click. No ceremony. No warning. The money stayed put, quiet in my checking account, as if relieved to finally have a purpose that didn't include silence and thankless sacrifice. I half expected a call, a text, a "Hey, did something happen?" But nothing came. Not from Mom, not from Carlene, not even from one of the cousins who still used me as their emergency contact without ever checking in unless their rent was late. They didn't notice. Or if they did, they didn't say anything, which only confirmed what I'd suspected. They had never imagined I was essential. I was background noise, an open tab on someone else's browser. They would find out soon enough. The next morning, while my tea steeped, I pulled up the logins for the utilities. Electric, gas, internet, homeowner's insurance, all still in my name. Originally, Mom had asked me to just help her out for a few years, back when she stopped teaching and claimed her Social Security benefits. Just until I hit 60, she'd said. You know, give me some breathing room. That was 4 birthdays ago. I opened each account and clicked Cancel Service one by one, carefully documenting every confirmation number. I wasn't being petty. I was being clean. I forwarded every cancellation email to myself, CC'd a second inbox I rarely used, then closed the laptop. Let them call the utility companies. Let them explain how they'd never switched the accounts over because they assumed the payments would just keep coming. Let them realize the lights were never automatic. December 24th came without fanfare. I didn't hang ornaments. I didn't play music. I made soup from scratch and let it simmer while I wrapped a gift for my neighbor's daughter, a girl who brought my mail up the stairs whenever it rained. By 5:30, I was curled up on the couch, bowl in my lap, when my phone buzzed. It was a group text I hadn't been part of in weeks, but one of the cousins must have looped me in by accident. "Someone call Duke Energy. Power just went out mid-potluck. Mom is freaking. Carlene yelling, everything's black." I stared at the message. Then, like muscle memory, I opened my email and searched account closed. There it was. December 20th. Confirmation that service to the Asheville property would end at 6 p.m., Christmas Eve, 6:14 p.m., and they were already in darkness. I didn't reply. I didn't smile. I just leaned back, the bowl of soup still warm in my lap, and whispered to no one. They thought comfort was free. An hour later, another message came through. "Maribel, did you do this?" I let the phone go dark in my hand. Because the answer didn't need to be spoken. They knew. The second that house blinked out like a burned-out bulb, they knew. Carlene must have screamed. Dolores probably called customer service, flustered, trying to fake polite outrage. "What do you mean the account's inactive?" "Well, ma'am, you're not listed as the primary or secondary holder." And it would dawn on her, like the lights weren't going to. I imagined them lighting candles, scrambling for flashlights, while guests milled around uncomfortably in the kitchen I paid to remodel. I wondered if Carlene still told people she picked out the backsplash I drove across 2 counties to pick up. Maybe now she'd remember who installed the damn thing. I didn't check social media. I didn't expect an apology. That's not how this family operates. We rewrite the story and pretend we meant well. Instead, I opened my digital planner and typed in the day. December 24th. First Christmas, not subsidizing betrayal. I brewed another cup of tea. The night was quiet, uninterrupted, the kind of silence that didn't ache anymore. Then, around 10:20, a text from my cousin Nate arrived. "Hey, did something happen? Aunt Dolores is losing it." I stared at it for a long minute. I could have answered. I could have said, "Ask her who kept the lights on for 3 years," or, "Tell her Maribel said Merry Christmas." But instead, I put the phone down, turned off the lamp, and let the dark stay a little longer than usual, because I wasn't punishing them. I was finally choosing myself. The next morning, while stirring sugar into my coffee, my phone buzzed with a message from a coworker I barely talked to outside meetings. He'd forwarded me a link to a local newspaper article. Dolores June hosts annual charity potluck, celebrating holiday generosity in Asheville. I clicked it open, and there it was. A full-color photo, banner headline, and a smiling Dolores, her arms around Carlene, standing in the very house I paid for. My tile floor, my refinished windows, my custom chandelier they once called too modern, until it became the perfect photo backdrop. Not one mention of my name, not even a line saying the house belonged to someone else. The caption beneath the photo read, "Special thanks to the Bishop family for opening their beautiful home to the community." I didn't even realize I was laughing until I heard myself. Not a joyful sound, short, bitter, disbelieving. Dolores had outdone herself. That wasn't just omission. That was theft in pearls and pressed lipstick. The same family who'd locked me out, erased me, and called me difficult was now accepting public praise for my money, my name, my space. And the worst part? I knew she'd do it. I just hadn't expected to see it printed. That afternoon, I sat on the balcony for a while, letting the cold bite at my fingers. The wind felt more honest than anything that had come from that house in years. Around 4, I got a private message. From Tamsin, my youngest cousin, 25. A little awkward, always too quiet around the older relatives, but sharp when she spoke. Her message was simple. "I need to show you something. I didn't agree with what they did, I recorded it. Attached was an audio file. I hesitated a second, then pressed play. Carlene's voice came through first, clipped, flat. She's cold. Everything she does feels calculated, like she wants applause for being decent. Then Dolores chimed in. She's not really family, she's just convenient. Laughter. Actual laughter. Then Byron's voice, slippery as always. Don't stir the pot. Keep her name on the papers. It's clean. No need to rock the boat. The recording ended there. No one objected. No one said, "Hey, that's out of line." They just laughed and moved on. I sat with that clip in my hands for a long while. I'd always suspected they had meetings about me. I'd felt it in how they chose their words, how they skipped mine. But hearing my mother call me convenient, was something else entirely. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed up putting together a package. I uploaded the audio clip to a clean, anonymous Google Drive. Then, I opened a new document and titled it, Statement of Financial Support, 2019 to present. Line by line, I laid it out. Mortgage payments, property taxes, renovation expenses, utility history, receipts, dates, bank statements, all tied directly to me. Then I addressed it quietly to 3 inboxes. Byron's boss at the bank, the charity board director who printed the potluck article, a local news editor I'd worked with years ago on a fundraiser, no signature. No subject line that said vengeance, just facts. Truth they couldn't edit out. Then I closed the laptop and made chamomile tea with honey, as if I hadn't just burned down their favorite illusion. By the following evening, the reactions began to drip in. The charity page updated its website. Dolores's name vanished from the host credits. Tamsin texted, "They're scrambling. Carlene's accusing me of betrayal. Mom's panicking. Byron's been temporarily relieved while they look into it." I sipped my tea and replied simply, "I didn't declare war. I declared independence." An hour later, a new email came in. Subject line, Mortgage Inquiry, Urgent Response Requested. From the financial branch, official tone, flagged as high priority. I didn't open it right away. Instead, I stood up, walked to my small closet, pulled down the storage box where I kept old greeting cards and photo prints from years ago. Ones with captions like, "To the best daughter," and "Couldn't have done it without you." I laid them on the table. And one by one, I tore them in half. Not out of anger, but because they were fiction. I wasn't erasing history. I was finally giving it an accurate headline. The next morning, after brushing off the last of the torn card pieces from my kitchen table, I sat down at my desk, opened my email, and began typing. I didn't write with venom. There was no anger in my fingers, only precision. I've been removed from the family, so I've removed myself from the financials. The house no longer concerns me. No hello, no closing signature, no attached explanation to soften the blow. I didn't need their understanding. That ship had set sail the moment they held a vote behind my back. I attached a PDF, a meticulous outline of every dollar I'd invested in that house, in them. Mortgage payments, utilities, insurance, even the guest towels Dolores insisted were too scratchy, before replacing them with the exact brand I'd already bought. Subject line, Exit, with receipts. Then I hit send. 24 minutes later, my phone lit up like a fire alarm. Carlene was first. "You're destroying everything Mom built." That part made me laugh. I hadn't destroyed anything, I just unplugged it. It wasn't my fault they never learned how to keep the lights on without me. Then Dolores, "How could you humiliate me like this? We're still your family." Still, like there was ever a pause between who they pretended to be and what they actually were. I didn't reply. Byron never called, probably too busy talking to HR after the anonymous report landed on his supervisor's desk, with his exact quote from the recording, "Keep her on the mortgage. No need to rock the boat." The charity board released a statement that same afternoon. "We've been made aware of inconsistencies regarding our recent donor recognition and have updated our records to reflect the correct sources of support. No names mentioned, but no need. The timeline spoke for itself. That night, I walked 2 blocks to Norma Fisk's house, the elderly neighbor who'd lived next to my mom for over a decade. She'd always waved politely, but never said much beyond the basics. This time, she opened the door before I knocked. "I saw the news," she said, holding out a small plate of oatmeal cookies. "And I figured you could use someone who's not surprised." We sat on her porch swing with the cookies between us and a thick quilt over our knees. She sipped sweet tea from a mason jar and gave me the kind of look people save for funerals. 1 part respect, 1 part sorrow. "I've lived next to your mother for 17 years, Norma said slowly. "You were always the strong one. That's why she tried so hard to erase you. Couldn't control you. Couldn't shape you. So she cut around you." I didn't speak for a moment. Then I nodded once and whispered, "She almost succeeded." Norma smiled gently, the way people do when they've seen enough in life to know what winning really looks like. "She didn't," she said. When I got home, I opened the drawer where I used to keep every photo that proved I'd belonged. The group snapshots from birthdays I wasn't really part of. The holiday cards that listed everyone's name but mine, even though I was the one who printed them. I didn't burn them. I didn't tear them like the greeting cards. I just threw them out, straight into the trash, no drama. Not because they made me angry, because they didn't matter anymore. Later that evening, I lit a candle in the kitchen. Not for atmosphere, but to remind myself that I could make light too. That my space was warm, even when theirs had gone cold. Just as I sat down on the couch, phone buzzing against the cushion, I glanced at the screen. "Tamsin, Grandma just asked if you were okay. Should I tell her the truth?" I stared at the message for a while, then typed back, "Tell her I'm more than okay. Tell her I'm finally visible." The message delivered. No dots of reply, no follow-up. But I didn't need one, because for once, I wasn't trying to be heard. I was simply done trying to disappear. I set the phone back on the couch cushion and sat there for a few more minutes, watching the snow drift outside my window. A car passed slowly below, headlights stretching long across the sidewalk, then disappearing. No horns, no music. Just the hush of a town settling into Christmas Eve. The next morning, I woke up early without an alarm. No one was expecting me. No plans to chase, no guilt to pretend wasn't sitting just under my skin. I made coffee, pulled on a sweater, and drove into town. The bank wasn't busy. Most people were already off for the holidays. I walked up to the counter with my folder in hand, the one I'd labeled in red marker, Mortgage Transfer. The woman behind the glass greeted me with a smile too wide for the hour. "I need to formally transfer responsibility for a loan I co-signed," I said. She blinked. "Would you like to schedule a meeting with one of our loan officers to review?" "No, I don't need to review anything. Just process the transfer." She hesitated, fingers poised above her keyboard. "This means you'll be removing your name and assigning all financial liability to Dolores June," I said calmly. "She's the listed owner of the property. She'll handle things from now on." "You understand you're waiving all rights to that asset?" "I understand," I said, handing her the notarized form I'd prepared the week before. "Trust me, I understand better than anyone else." I signed where she pointed, handed over the documentation, and walked out. No victory music, no slow-motion applause, just the soft shuffle of my boots across the tile and the jingle of the door behind me as I stepped into the wind. I didn't post about it, didn't text Tamsin. I didn't owe anyone an announcement. Instead, I went home and did something so simple it felt radical. I lived. I cooked myself a real breakfast, bacon, toast, eggs over medium. I curled up with a book I'd been meaning to finish since fall. And when I looked around my apartment and saw no twinkling lights, no stockings, no pine needles to sweep, I didn't feel the absence. I felt release. Christmas morning arrived with snowfall so light it looked like powdered sugar across the window panes. I opened the blinds and let the quiet in. no notifications, no guilt-tripped invites, no last-minute requests for just one dish, or, can you pick up a bottle of wine? Just the steady hum of my space, my rules, my name on the lease. I brewed coffee slowly, like a ritual, wrapped myself in a blanket that didn't smell like anyone but me. I looked out over the trees beyond the parking lot and whispered aloud, "This year, no one's disappointed in me, because no one's demanding I be someone else." And that was enough. I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumphant. What I felt was quieter than either of those things, like stepping out of a storm and realizing you'd been soaked for years. Around noon, as I was pouring the last of the coffee into my mug, a thought surfaced. They probably didn't think I'd follow through. They probably laughed, called it a bluff, assumed the money would keep flowing. But a week later, back in Asheville, a certified letter landed in the mailbox at the house with the gray shutters I once believed held memories worth protecting. Carlene brought it inside, opened it with a sigh, and read aloud the change of responsibility. Dolores just sat there, stone-faced, no rage, no apology. "She really did it," Carlene muttered. Dolores said nothing, because what could she say? For once, there was no one left to blame. I hadn't slammed a door. I hadn't made a speech. I had simply stepped aside and left the weight where it belonged. I imagined that moment often, not to savor it, but to remember what quiet justice looks like. Later that evening, Tamsin texted again. "They're asking if you're coming back next year." I waited a moment before answering, then typed, "They should worry more about how they'll keep the lights on." I didn't add a smiley face. I didn't soften it. Some truths stand best on their own. The next week moved slowly, like winter stretching itself across the days just to prove it could. I kept to myself. Slept with the window cracked open. Cooked meals that filled the apartment with smells I remembered from my childhood, but hadn't tasted at my mother's table in years. Real meals, not potluck dishes, where love was measured by calories and competitiveness. One afternoon, I checked the mail and found a cream-colored envelope with my name written in blue cursive. The handwriting was unmistakable. Slanted, tidy, a little too perfect to be warm. Inside was a folded card. No holiday graphics, just embossed gold on thick paper. A card meant to look thoughtful, expensive, heavy with effort, light on truth. It read, "I know I've made mistakes. I hope one day you'll sit at this table again. Merry Christmas, Mom." No apology, no acknowledgement. Just hope, hanging out there like it had been earned. I read it twice. Not because I didn't understand it the first time, but because I needed to feel what it stirred in me. And what I felt wasn't anger. I folded the card carefully and slid it into the back of a drawer. Not the trash. That small difference mattered to me. I hadn't stopped caring entirely. I'd just stopped negotiating my worth for a seat they didn't offer in good faith. Forgiveness, I was learning, wasn't about them. It was about what I didn't want to carry anymore. A few days later, Tamsin knocked on my door with a plastic container of molasses cookies and a scarf half-knitted hanging from her coat pocket. I let her in without a word, and she plopped down on my couch like she'd always belonged there. We didn't talk about the house. Instead, we talked about her thesis, something about Appalachian migration patterns and generational memory. Then the weather. Then how good the coffee tasted from the new shop down the block. Halfway through a second cup, she said, "They still don't understand why you left." I didn't look up from the yarn I'd started unraveling from the fringe of a blanket. "I didn't leave," I said. "I just stopped chasing people who stood still." She nodded, then leaned back against the cushions. "You know, Grandma asks about you, not in a guilt trip kind of way, just like she's remembering something she forgot to hold on to." I didn't know what to do with that, so I just said, "Thanks for telling me." We didn't hug when she left. It wasn't that kind of moment, but when the door clicked shut behind her, the silence that followed felt more like space than emptiness. Meanwhile, back in Asheville, Dolores was now writing the mortgage checks herself. Carlene had taken over handling the tax filings. The house, from what I heard, still stood, still held birthdays, still had its table, its over-decorated mantel, and its familiar smell. But the air in it had changed. They didn't talk about me, but my name lingered. In the stories they edited around, in the gaps between traditions, in the questions no one asked out loud. Sometimes absence is louder than presence. I updated my legal records that month, changed my mailing address, listed Tamsin as my emergency contact, noted the day I'd signed off from the loan. I wrote it on the corner of my wall calendar in pen. 1 year, free. No balloons, no champagne. Just quiet acknowledgement. On the first truly clear day of January, I took a walk through the trail behind my apartment building. The air had that kind of cold that made your lungs straighten out. It bit at the back of my throat, but it also woke something up. I stopped at the top of the hill and looked out across the frozen creek below. Some houses you leave behind. Some houses you outgrow. And either way, they stop feeling like home the moment you stop asking to be let back in. Before we part ways, let me say this. Leaving that house wasn't the hardest thing I've done. Learning to live in peace without seeking permission, that was harder. For most of my life, I believed loyalty meant silence, that staying quiet was strength, that if I gave enough, loved hard enough, paid long enough, they'd see me. They didn't. And maybe they never will. But I learned something far more valuable than approval. You don't need a seat at someone else's table to know your worth. You can build your own and serve peace, not pain. If you've ever been the one holding the family together while they made you feel like the problem, I want you to hear this. You're not difficult. You're just done being diminished. Sometimes, stepping away isn't giving up. It's coming home, to yourself. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from a family, a friend group, or a community that made you feel small? What helped you choose peace over proving yourself? Drop your story in the comments. If this video spoke to your heart, type 1, or tell me where you're watching from. I read every message. And if it didn't quite land, tell me why. I'm always here to listen, just like I hope someone had been for me. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's more ahead, more stories that heal, more voices that rise, and more truth we're finally ready to tell. This isn't goodbye. This is just the start of you choosing you.